But still, someone totally self-realised wouldn't necessarily know. See, he couldn't give a physiological explanation as to why my nail's growing out my finger or something.
Of course.
He could, or he could.
Of course. A physiological explanation. Your physiological explanation is relative. The truth is that God has created everything based on His form. And because God has hands with nails, you have hands with nails. But the material world, everything is temporary and is acted upon by God's energy time, which causes things to be created, to be maintained and annihilated. And the energy which creates is called the mode of passion. And when the mode of passion acts, it causes the temporary manifestation of objects in the material world. So growth in the material world is caused by the action of the mode of passion. And that's the perfect explanation.
Right.
Everything is explained in terms of God's energy. Because everything is God's energy. If you explain it in another way, you're wrong. It may be functional, but you're wrong. Yeah? Like, for example, you may say, if I put a 50p stamp on this letter, it will go to Europe. But if I put a 90p stamp on, it can go all the way to Australia. Therefore, the bigger the stamp, the further the letter can go. So that's true, but that doesn't mean that the size of the stamp is delivering the letter. There's a person behind it.
Yeah,
there's a person behind it who's delivering the letter. Your hypothesis is, the bigger the stamp or the more expensive the stamp, the further the letter will go. But actually that's incidental. It just happens that there's a personal system of people called the Postal Service who deal with your letter in accordance with the size of the stamp, you see. So you may speculate some impersonalistic law of stamps and letters and how far they can go, but the truth of the matter is there's a person behind it called the postman. And he's acting according to his own personal, how can we say, he has his way of behaving. God has his way of behaving, and therefore his material energy behaves in a particular way according to his will. And therefore you can predict it will behave like this again and again under particular circumstances. That's God's personal convention. It acts because that's God's personal convention, not because of your law. Your law is a way of understanding or making predictions on how God's energy will work. But it's not working because of your law. It's working because that's God's personal convention. So similarly, you may make a law of letters and stamps, but it's not working because of your law. It's working because of the personal convention of the Postal Service. It's their convention that if you pay more money for your stamp, they're going to take your letter further. Like that. That's their convention. It's not because of your speculated law of stamps. That's a simple example, a simple analogy to show how the laws of science or physics are not the absolute truth, and neither do they deny the presence of personal control of God.
Can you say something about the theory of evolution? Life coming from chemicals or something. How do you discover that? I say, I think life came.
Well, they say that life came from chemicals in the past. So then you ask, can you please demonstrate this? And they say, we can't demonstrate it right now, but in the future we'll be able to. So this philosophy is, life came from chemicals in the past. Life will come from chemicals in the future. It's only just right now that life doesn't come from chemicals. So I'm not going to buy that as evidence. Life actually comes from life. We see this everywhere around us. Anything that's living came from something else that's living. There's no example of something living coming from something that wasn't living. And when something is dead, there's no example of bringing it back to life. If life comes from chemicals, take a dead body from the morgue that's well and truly dead. You know, it's been there a few weeks. Bring it out and kickstart it with your chemicals.
What about actually within the theory of, if you ignore the stars, what about changes of species and stuff? I remember you said something about that before. That doesn't work.
Well, actually, scientists have shown that there are changes. A species may change, but there are limitations. There are parameters within it which a species may change. Like a dog may become big or small, or have black spots, or long hair or short hair, or a flat nose or a straight nose, or big teeth or no teeth. So you can genetically mutate the dog to have different appearances. But essentially, he's still a dog, and he'll never become a butterfly or a beetle, or a cow or something like that. You see, because you can only change that prototype so far, like a piece of elastic. You know, it will stretch and stretch. You know, this piece of elastic has evolved, and now it's 6 inches, now it's 7, now it's 8. Boy, if we gave it millions of years, it would probably go from here to the other side of the universe, right? But no, because it's going to stretch so far, then it will break. So similarly, the blueprints of different species, they can be adjusted. The genetic codes can be adjusted, but they can only be adjusted so far. And amoebas don't become human beings. It doesn't go that far. Furthermore, if someone would like to say that the human beings evolved from a primordial soup, please explain all the stages. It's actually quite a fantasy, because the scientists say it happened like this, but if you ask them for a mechanism, they cannot give a mechanism.